This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on India-Nepal bilateral ties. The participants are Veena Sikri, former ambassador, and Harsh Ranjan, anchor.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's 2 days visit to Nepal to co-chair with his Nepalese counterpart the 7th Nepal-India Joint Commission meeting and signing of a slew of pacts ranging from agriculture to road construction to defense to energy and many other sectors tells India's commitment to its neighborhood policy first with Nepal as our priority partner. Veena ma'am, how do you see Jaishankar's visit in terms of further extending ties between the two neighbors?
Thank you. I think Nepal is definitely a priority partner for India. It is highest priority partners in India's neighborhood first foreign policy. And we have seen that right since 2014, the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister have attached the highest importance to this. Prime Minister went on a bilateral visit to Nepal right in that year. He went twice in the first year. And it was a bilateral visit after decades that was taking place by an Indian Prime Minister to Nepal. And in this year, we have seen that External Affairs Minister, it was his very first visit of 2024, and he went to Nepal and he chaired with his counterpart from Nepal the 7th meeting of the India-Nepal Joint Commission. Now, it's interesting. This is only the 7th meeting of the India-Nepal Joint Commission, but this Joint Commission was set up way back in the 1980s. So I'm glad that our government is reviving this tradition, because the institution of the Joint Commission, which is the highest level political mechanism between the two countries, is the most important view the entire relationship. You review it in areas of economic cooperation, trade, connectivity, land, air and rail connectivity, defense, security, agriculture, people to people. Every aspect of the relationship is covered under the Joint Commission, and there is a multi-ministerial approach. External Affairs Minister chairs this commission on the Indian side, but the involvement of a large number of Indian ministries across the government of India is very important to the success of the commission. So that is why holding these joint commission meetings is so important, to bring the focus on what has been achieved in the previous years and to plan for the future. So I think the outcome of External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar's visit has been strong and significant and productive and very, very useful for the future. It is a very good augury for the future. We have seen that how the agreements that have been signed are so important for every aspect of India-Nepal relationship. And the most important thing is that these decisions are on mutual benefit. You know, there's great benefit to Nepal and to India.
Veenaji, an agreement, as you know, for India to import 10,000 megawatt of hydroelectricity over the next 10 years. How important is this for the benefit of both the sides?
Under this, India is committed to buy 10,000 megawatts of power from Nepal over the next 10 years. This is very important because it is this lack of a market for Nepal's hydropower potential that has sometimes been holding back Nepal in signing agreements. And we know that Nepal, in order to develop its hydropower potential, which is very important, it wants to do it, India is the only one who can buy it. So I think this long-term power trade agreement is very significant for both countries. And it will also hasten up the development of so many power projects in Nepal. And it will mean that these power projects will be signed, they'll be completed, and there will be a ready market for the export. It's important to realize that India and Nepal have a very long land border of 1,850 kilometers. This is very significant, and this covers 5 states of India. It covers Sikkim, West Bengal, Bihar, UP, and Uttarakhand. So you can imagine that, how much it is important to coordinate the efforts of all these states. And this is what the Joint Commission has done. So this has been very significant. There's been also the other significant outcome in the small, high visibility community development projects. 59 such projects were handed over to Nepal by India. And these included schools, these included health facilities, 25 schools, 32 health facilities, a cultural center project, and a new library building for Tribhuvan University. Now you can see across the spectrum how these projects are so important, and these were commitments undertaken after the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, when India was one of the first countries to go to Nepal's help, and all these commitments have now been completed. This is a very important point, that under Prime Minister Modi, the focus on implementation is so strong that already the completed projects have been handed over to the government of Nepal.
Right. Vinaji, as you rightly pointed out, India-Nepal Joint Commission was established in 1987. How has this platform for high-level exchanges contributed towards furthering bilateral ties?
I think earlier, of course, the one must accept that the relationship between India and Nepal is very, very important, but it is also a relationship that is very highly politicized, and in some senses it has been over the last few years a bit volatile also. So I think in the previous decades somehow these joint commissions, there were agreement from both sides, because for the joint commission to meet, both the foreign ministers have to agree. So if one or the other is not accepting, then of course the meeting doesn't take place. But I'm trying to say that under Prime Minister Modi, the focus has been on reviving these institutional mechanisms, because this is the only way to get government to government commitment. And unless you have a government commitment, what are you going to implement? So this is why this revival of institutional mechanisms is such an important focus of this government, and it has given good rewards, because, when the external affairs minister is there, it comes in the media, he meets different groups of people, he meets academicians, he meets students, he meets corporate leaders, he meets political leaders, and all of them are able to see in the outcome of the meetings how it is benefiting the people of Nepal, and how by continuing such mechanisms, you can hasten the bilateral development of progress and increase the mutual trust and friendship between the two countries. So while, as I said, even Prime Minister's visit in 2014 took place after so many decades. So I think this neighborhood first policy has definitely led to this blossoming of the relationships with Nepal, certainly in the last few years, and I hope it continues strongly in the future.
It also may be recalled that PM Modi, during his visit to Nepal in 2014, has given the HIT formula. HIT is for India-Nepal relationships. HIT as an H for highways, I for highways, and T for transways.
I think that look at the infrastructure development, highways is certainly part of the road and rail and connectivity infrastructure. But I think if you look at the infrastructure investment, just in terms of these 59 projects that I spoke about, you can see that the focus on this is to focus on what the people need. And certainly what you said, our Prime Minister had said this in 2014, but in 2015, when the earthquake happened, then the entire requirement of the government of Nepal, that was such a devastating earthquake, and it left people homeless and cold in the mountain regions. It was a very, very difficult time for the government of Nepal. And India, by stepping in such a big way, not only with our disaster relief assistance, with our flights going there, our professionals and experts going there, but then committing all this amount that has been committed over 9 years. And today we saw the result that, you have these schools that have been handed over, 25 schools, 32 health facilities, a culture sector project, and the new Tibuban University Central Library building. That is important, that your aid and assistance has to be what the people of that country want at that time. The recognition by the government of Nepal, by their statements, by the statement made by Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal Prachanda and other external affairs minister called on President Ramchandra Paudel also, and of course had bilateral meetings with his counterpart. All these leaders of Nepal have warmly welcomed external affairs minister's visit and said how useful it was, the outcomes for the people of Nepal. And there was another terrible earthquake in Nepal, in Jajarkot and other areas in the West recently, and that also government has promised 1,000 crores worth of assistance for that. So keeping in mind always the interest and needs and whatever the people of Nepal are asking for, the outcome has to be assessed very positively and strongly.
And India has also decided to extend a financial package of Nepali rupees 1,000 crore, that is $75 million, for reconstruction of infrastructure in the districts affected in the 2015 earthquake. This shows an emotional connect of India with the people of Nepal. Vinaji, don't you think this kind of connect help and make significant strides in strengthening bilateral relationships between the two countries?
Of course, people-to-people relationship with Nepal has been the bedrock of the relationship between India and Nepal. And I think we need to develop it much further. For example, young students, young academicians, these kind of people who are always debating, discussing, and are very amenable to all kinds of send misinformation and create a wrong approach. And then that becomes viral, it becomes spread, and you have to really explain yourself much more. But I think that constantly working on the people-to-people relationship is very important. And I feel that, for example, universities in India and Nepal should have departments of studies, Department of Indian Studies in Nepal and Department of Nepal Studies in India. in Banaras Hindu University, for example, in Tribhuvan University, for example, in Kathmandu University. Then there is the cultural connect on people to people, the religious connect on people to people. These are so real. The intermarriage between the peoples of India and Nepal, it's called the roti-beti relationship. So it is absolutely the sky is the limit. And as for the people in the 5 states that I spoke about, I mean, there's the day-to-day because it's an open border between India and Nepal. And there's the day-to-day movement. And, if there's a difference in price of a good of 10 rupees between India and Nepal, goods will start moving direction. So it's something that has to be constantly looked at, responded to. And the only way to do it is to have this important connectivity at the political level, at all levels, from the Prime Minister downwards. And so that whatever the need arises, whatever the question arises, whatever the misunderstanding arises, the leadership connect is there to solve all problems.
The two sides also reviewed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1950, security and boundary related matters. Is there any area of concern that needed to be addressed or looked upon, keeping in view the high-edge technology era that we are living in?
Yes, certainly. I mean, a treaty signed in 1950, if there are areas that the government of Nepal is interested in doing, I think the government of India has a completely open mind on that. And certainly another fundamental basis of bilateral relationship between India and Nepal, that treaty is the bedrock. And just like I told you that people to people is the bedrock, another bedrock is this treaty. So at all times, whatever concerns, say, the government of Nepal has, this is the forum to discuss it. Bilaterally at PM to PM level, then at the Joint Commission level. These are the two levels at which the 1950 treaty should be discussed so that there should not be any misunderstanding. Otherwise, as I told you, in the media, in political statements, all kinds of deliberate misunderstandings are attempted to be created. Oh, but this is not helping Nepal. We should do this and that. We should ask for this. And Government of India said, we are completely open to any discussions. If you have any specific points, please raise it with us. We can either solve it, or if it involves a renegotiation, we can do that also. But I think from both sides, why should you rush into a renegotiation unless you think it's absolutely necessary? Now, when you look at security and defense, and as you said, social media has come in. So at some stage, it may well happen that, all right, let's see whether clause by clause we need to introduce any other thing. But I think just keep the trust between the two governments by having frequent interactions so that all problems can be solved.
Ma'am, down the line, 10 years, where do you see India and Nepal relationship going further and strengthening further?
I think that definitely it will strengthen further. And I think the way in which it should strengthen further is to meet the economic needs of Nepal. Right now, the economy of Nepal is in a very, very difficult and precarious condition. They're highly indebted to China. They had this phase where China was really trying to be very overbearing and aggressive in Nepal. And one of their former ambassadors used to even intervene and talk to every political party concerned, and as though they were some kind of a local viceroy or something. But that has not had a very happy outcome for the people of Nepal. They've now realized it. And I think under Prime Minister Dahal Prachanda, you've seen that he has very much shown keen interest in every way in strengthening the relationship with India. And I think that this is again coming back to the need of India is not there. The third country is that Nepal's own interest to develop its own relation with China or any other country. But India is there for the people of India and Nepal. So this is the context in which we talk to them. And I think in this context, there is a tremendous amount that can be worked out, even in the connectivity, all the petroleum products. We can build pipelines. We can give access to Nepal to ports in Bangladesh. This is now being discussed through the corridor that separates Nepal and Bangladesh. There is so much cooperation happening under BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal, which is a subgroup of the SAARC. And the motor vehicles agreement is being discussed and negotiated, almost on the verge of implementation. So all these things are there so that, this whole sub-regional growth can be strong, the movement can be strong, and there can be completely mutually beneficial growth and economic prosperity. Because I think that Nepal economic situation is so bad that many of the people go abroad in search of work. Of course, many of them come to India, but many of them have been going to the Gulf and other areas and have very difficult conditions there. Right. I think their own economic development, they're looking forward to it, and India is there to help them.
Veena ji, thank you very much for talking to Akashvani.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Nepal bilateral ties. The participants were Veena Sikri, former ambassador, and Harsh Ranjan, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com. or WhatsApp on 9289094044.